everyone, welcome back to the Evermore YouTube channel. We're back with the Evermore podcast. Another fantastic week in the life of Newcastle United. I've been joined by two of our best squad members. I've got the man who's going to rename his cat Arteta because it never fucking sits still. Mark is here, and he's been rehydrated with Cockney tears. Carl is back in the house. How are we doing, lads?
Good evening, man. That was brilliant.
Had to get you in one. Good to see you as always, boys. Good to see you. Nice to have you back, Carl, as well from your festive break, mate. So We've got loads to get stuck into in a minute. Just before we do, a little bit of housekeeping. If you haven't already, please click that like and subscribe button. We'd love you to come on board. We've had a few more subs in the last few days, which is awesome. I think we're on like 2,255, Mark. Is that right? I think.
Just about, I think.
About that. Yeah, thereabouts. So yeah, just do us a favour, hit that subscribe button, and if you don't, I'm going to give you a yellow card, just like Andy Madley did last night. All right, because I've had enough of it. Smash that subscribe button.
I hope you've
What's
got
that, mate?
I said I hope you've got loads of those cards.
And that's it, Carl. That's enough from you. There's a yellow card for you as well, mate. Come on, don't push it. I'll get the red out. You'll not regret it, lads. We've got loads of content here. Lads and lasses, you're all welcome. Free content. We don't charge anybody for anything. We just love talking about the club. And at the minute, why not? It's an amazing club. We're live as well, so jump in the comments. I think a few of you have already. We're going to get stuck right in to the first segment of the night. We'll get a couple of these messages first. We've got KLW40793. That's very specific. Sounds like some kind of formula for some kind of elixir. Nice to see you.
I think that might be a relative of mine.
Ah, fantastic. Well, you're welcome. Smash that button if you haven't already. We've got Davey. Good evening to you, Davey. Ash is there. Evening, folks. Happy New Year and all that. Same to you, Ash. Gibbo is in the house. And Roger, the Dodger, is in the house too. Good to see you, lads. Right, let's get stuck in then. So we're still laughing at the tears flowing from the Thames, from the Arsenal fans. Defence was king, Carl, last night. I don't think anything's getting past these guys. This defence could stop fucking Thanos, couldn't they, mate? They're that good. How class are these?
Yeah. I think it's definitely testament to. I think I've seen a stat where Newcastle have conceded, I think, of the whole season in December of like something that happened last December in terms of the whole season itself kind of thing. So I think the defence at the moment, I seen a tweet out where someone was calling it injustice that Saka had 3 players around him. Like I said before, like that's what you do with class players. You protect. You're not just there to roll over. I think it's not the first time we've heard this season when we had the Whinge and Scousers who were doing it the same as well, even though they'd won. Saying about our tactics and what like that. What we're supposed to do, just lie over. I think the defense, as Eddie says all the time, it's not just the back 5. They defend from the front. And I think if you look like last night, you had in the first 10 minutes when Arsenal flew out of the blocks quite quick, and Dan Burn had a bit of a tough start, but then quickly was shielded by Joe Linton and Willock. And I thought those 3 did an absolute brilliant job. And you know what? And I think that's probably one of the reasons why Sam Maximan might not start, is because I think Eddie's maybe still a little bit iffy about his defensive work. But in terms of what what you're talking about, defence, it's just brilliant at the moment.
It is. It's absolutely sensational. Mark, there was one player in particular that was getting loads of plaudits. And, every time we see this kid play, he just seems to get better and better. I've just been getting involved in a Twitter debate as to whether he is better than Jonathan Woodgate, which is an interesting one. But, mate, how good is Sven Botman, Mark? I mean, this kid's 22 years old. Surely he's one of the best centre-halves in the league, mate, isn't he?
It's getting to the point where you start to argue he's one of the best in the world. It's maybe he's a little bit too early for that, but he's so good. The stat, Carl, you were talking about before is that Newcastle have conceded less goals this season than they did in December of last year. It was 12 goals in December last year, and it's only 11 in the league this season. So
that's what
that tells you the difference. But Botman has just been utterly sensational, and he just doesn't look flustered at all. It doesn't matter who he comes up against, what's happening in the game. He's just brilliant. He's great on the ball, which in this day and age in the league you absolutely need. He's good in the air. He's good to tackle. He doesn't have an issue at all. He's just brilliant.
I think I might make a prediction now. Sven Botman, young player of the season.
It's a bold one, Carl, but you know what? The way he's playing, it's really hard to look past it. I mean, it's an interesting one. Just there from Ash, you said it's becoming an insult to Botman to call him a Rolls Royce. There's currently nothing of his quality compared to him. He stands alone. Just on the back of that comment from Ash as well, I think I was talking to you, Mark, about this the other day, wasn't I, as well, that there's been some comments about how poor Van Dijk's been since he come back from this injury, that his legs have gone a bit. Now, we were talking about this, I think, how the hell Holland could leave this guy at home for the World Cup and Sven Botman. You know, how good were their defence? But Van Dijk does look shaky. I mean, when Isak played against him at Anfield, he absolutely tore him to shreds. And you're looking at Botman, and I have not seen a player do that to him. Even Haaland, I think he fell asleep. He took his eye off once for Haaland, and it was probably, what was it, his second or third game or something? He just took his eye off Haaland for a second. That's all Haaland needs, and he scored. You know, but overall through the game, him and Shaw played really well against Haaland, and
yeah.
See, Haaland was in a game against Botman. I've not seen a centre-half get that close to Haaland all season. I think Botman, for me, I think you're right, Carl. If he keeps playing the way he's playing, if he's not Young Player of the Year, he's got to get into that team of the season, hasn't he? Because who's better than him at centre-half right now?
I don't think there is many.
There isn't another centre-back on that level. Maybe it's Gabriel, you'd argue, for Arsenal, who's been at that level. Saliba as well. So he's probably one of the, two of those three. But Botman's definitely up there with both of those, if not above. Yeah, are you talking about Van Dijk? I think Van Dijk might be injured as well now again for a few weeks. So
yeah, but they said apparently it's worse than what they first thought. So he might be out for a little while. So that's a big blow for them because
it is shucks for Liverpool.
Yeah,
they can't play Monopoly, lads. They can't just go out and buy another player. This tweet Ash has come up with. I saw this doing the round on Twitter. I was absolutely killing myself laughing. So the tweet doing the rounds was Botman could piss the bed and still have a clean sheet. I think that is just superb. That is. Sometimes Twitter comes out with some absolute pearlers, and that is definitely one of them. But I think going back to the lads as a whole, you're right, Carl. I think the first 10 minutes or so, I was really worried about Burn. I text Mark. And I said, is this the night the Burn at left-back experiment is gone? Because he's getting absolutely toasted here. And I think credit definitely goes to the lads, Carl, but I think credit also goes to the sideline because I think Jason Tyndall spied that really early and he told Willock and he told Joe Litton to sit back and protect them, as you rightly say. And because of the engine those lads have, I know we're going to talk about players linked to the club and everything and all these sexy players and everything else, but you can't underestimate the graft that these lads are putting in to cover a player like Burn, who's obviously getting targeted as a weakness, mate. We never had that before, Carl, did we? That's why we used to get rinsed by these teams.
Yeah, I think that's unfairly what Sean Longstaff gets unfairly criticised as well because he has an engine, and I think that's what Eddie Howe's sides now are. They're that high pressing, big engine teams, and I think especially, I think we've said this before, but I think the reason why it works with Dan Burn at left back, yes, he does get maybe rinsed a couple of times, but the guys, back him up and support him. But because Trippier bombs so forward so much, you need that protection. And as I said numerous times, it all of a sudden becomes a back three with Shaw, Botman, and Burn. And it works really, really well because you talk about Sven Botman being left-footed, but I've seen, I think Adam on the chat as well loves him, but he's spraying these 60, 70-yard ball passes with his left and his right foot. So he's got everything. And I think that's why, I was rightly concerned myself the way Arsenal flew out of the blocks, but, the coaching team spotted that and said, right, this is what you need to do. And that's possibly why Sam Maximan at the moment is a casualty of not starting because maybe they don't trust his defensive work. And that's something he may have to work on to get into the team, or he may actually leave.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, Carl, just to bring you in on that, Mark. We were talking about John Joe Shelvey, after he got his injury, which is unlucky for John Joe. But I think Carl's just hit the nail on the head there. The way Sven Botman plays the game, you don't need Shelvey coming back and getting in these guys' way because they do it so well. The way he sprays that ball, as Carl rightly says, Mark, I think that spells the end probably for John Joe Shelvey at this football club, that Botman has that ability. Would you agree, mate?
Yeah, and to be fair, it's not just Botman, it's Shaw as well. Shaw's been released a little bit. I always said this when Shelby was in the side. It especially under the previous manager, you lost a good portion of what Fabian Shaw does well, and that's passing the ball. And when Shelby's coming and taking the ball from 2 yards away, it's not what you want. You want Shaw to run into that space in front of him, to drive forward and then play the ball. I mean, there was a prime example last night when he moved it forward and put the ball through to Callum Wilson, who eventually got the shot away. That's what you want from Fabian Shaw. That's what his game is, and you lose that as soon as you ask him to just deliver the ball 2 yards to the player just in front of him. But the pair of them just complement each other so well, and Botman's delivery, like you say, Cole, left or right foot is just brilliant. And there was the ball that he pinged. It must have been 60, 70 yards to Trippier last night. Bang on the money. It was over the head of, was it Zinchenko or Xhaka that was over that side at that point, and there was no hesitation. He just pinged it, and it was just brilliant.
Yeah, it's just a comment there before we get some more on the game. Just we've got L Stapleton there in the comments said, hasn't slept for 41 hours. I hope we don't send you to sleep, mate. I hope you stay awake for the episode. So great to see you in the comments. And just this point here, actually, Carl, I was going to mention this as well, but PDK's jumped in. Wilson was off his game last night. I thought Wilson looked a bit rusty last night, and I know Audie said in the chat, didn't he, that at one point Howe was telling them to stop pressing. Because I think, do you think he was just a little bit too keen to impress and he burnt himself out, which is why he got hooked early? Do you think, mate?
I still don't think he's 100% right. He doesn't
look right, does he?
He doesn't look right. I think obviously he didn't. He came on against Leeds and nothing happened. When he came on, nothing really happened. When Sam Maximan came on against Leeds, I don't think he touched the ball for about 7 minutes. And I think Wilson as well, he does try, but it is a little bit of a concern. When he's on his game, he's a top striker and he can finish all day long, but there's always some kind of doubt with him. And if we are to progress, unfortunately, there's going to be casualties along the way. And I think the club and Eddie, the way he is, I think there will be some casualties in the summer. And I'm not saying Wilson will be sold, because it might be someone like Wood who would go out. But then if we signed another striker, to complement Isak, who you've spent 60-odd million on, Wilson may come in for maybe some of the, with all due respect, some of the games that you might want to rest some players, because he can't do that, because he does burn himself out, or he plays 2, 3, 4 games in a row and then he's out for 8 games, 9 games with an injury.
Well, it's interesting just because we have got an image about this, Mark. Just to bring this in, talking about Wilson's injury and illness record. This is an unbelievably positive sight, isn't it, to see for all Newcastle fans that Alexander Isak is now back in full training. I've got a sneaky feeling, and we're going to talk about the Cup of the Air, but I've got a sneaky feeling we might see him against Sheffield Wednesday, whether it be on the bench or whether it be from the start, if he's in training already. Because Howe did say, Mark, didn't he, when he's fit, he's back in the squad. Do you think Isak's a lot closer than Howe's given away? Maybe do you think he's keeping his cards to his chest a little bit?
Well, this is Eddie all over, isn't it? He's going to play the cards really, really close to his chest because he doesn't want to give too much away. We've seen this with transfers, we've seen this with team selection and stuff. So, if he's close, I think he'll be in the squad. He may get 10 minutes at the end, depending on how the game's going. If he's not ready, he's not ready. But the sight of him back in training is music to the ears of Newcastle fans, isn't it? Because it gives you just another quality option at that position. And you saw last night, when you're taking Wilson off to then bring on Chris Woods, who, in all fairness, isn't going to do anything in that game. It's the wrong sort of game for him. You're not lumping balls up to him and feeding off knockdowns. It's not that sort of game. Cool. But I think Wilson needed the rest at that point, because I think he had run himself into the ground a little bit, despite not actually doing an awful lot. He just worked hard.
According to Gary Neville, bringing on Murphy and Wood was a luxury.
Yes. Okay. Arsenal didn't have that. Arsenal didn't have that luxury apparently.
And another thing on Isak, I'm more impressed that the Castor badges are still on the shorts, still on than seeing Isak back.
He's not washed them. He's not washed them, Carl. That's why. Once he washes them, he'll be off. Absolutely, mate. But no, I mean, just before we'll get on to some of the antics that went on last night, we know where we're going to go with that one. I've got to say it, lads. Joe Litton's got to put that fucking header away, hasn't he? Either one of you can take that. I mean, I honestly, I just sat and face palmed for about 5 minutes straight when I seen that back. I couldn't believe it, man.
You know, when you see what he did, who is it he scored the header against the other week, and you just think
it was Leicester. Yeah,
Leicester. And you're dropping into that position, and you just bury it.
I'm going to stick up for him a bit because when I played football, that was one of my best attributes up in the air. And I think when the ball comes in, Shaw obviously flicks it on. And what I'll say is he was already going down for me, like into going for it. And I think he misjudged the flight because if you look where it hits him, it hits the top of his head and not straight on, and that's why it goes up. Whereas if you had,
Ash has got a point. Carl, do you think the weather played a part in it as well? Because it was pissing it down. Do you think the weather was a bit to blame?
Possibly. But I just think the way that he was going, maybe it might have been a little bit slippy. But you know that when he does connect with the header, it's not the first time he's had a bullet header. He can score them. I just think that flick and maybe the ground, I don't know. I just think it was because it hit the top of his head. And obviously, if it had hit him square in, it would have been buried in the back of the net. But like Sir Les said last night, like you've got to take those chances. And we only had a couple of little small chances, and that was quite a big chance.
That was the big one. I mean, speaking of Joe Litton, you know, I thought he was immense. I really did. I mean, I gave Botman my man of the match in the post match, but Joe came a real close second. I thought he was brilliant, covering for Burn and everything else. He put in so many great challenges that this stupid referee penalised for free kicks, him and Miggy. And this one in particular, Mark, and I'm going to pass this over to you because you've been doing a lot of work on this. So this was one of Joe's challenges, which led to the so-called scandalous penalty from the Lego head fucking Arsenal manager, which we're going to get into in a minute. But this is a brilliant challenge. You can see that there, Mark, on that slide, can't you? You take it away, mate. Tell everyone why that's not a foul.
Oh, I mean, you can see on the picture. There's no debate about this. All you have to do is watch the game and look at that and go, yeah, it's not foul. How that's a foul, how that's then a yellow card as well, is just beyond belief.
I wish.
And then,
I wish you could, from the linesman's point of view, because he was the one that waved the flag. I wish there was some sort of thing. I wish there was something out there called VAR or, you know, this Hawkeye where you could actually turn the angle around and see what the linesman said, because that picture there is a fucking joke.
It's ridiculous.
Looking for that.
As Mark says, I mean, that's schoolboy football, Mark, isn't it? We played schoolboy football. If the ref would give that in schoolboy, one of the parents would have chinned him. Like, what is going on with that? He's a professional referee, man.
It was unbelievable. For that to then follow into, or to then precede the penalty incident.
Well, let's get that one up. This is what all the Arsenal fans were crying about.
And I've got to be honest, right? Let's look at that's a penalty. If that happens at any other 10th, that's a penalty. But it shouldn't have been a free kick in the first place. The one at the other end on Burn was a penalty as well. So
the rugby tackle,
it swings and roundabouts with that. You know, it happens at one end, it happens at the other. The foul, it wasn't a foul. That was, if you know, you're looking at that. I've got to be honest. I'm not sure how that hasn't then been looked at and given as a penalty, because that's a foul all day long. But the plain fact of that whole sequence was it wasn't a foul in the first place, so that free kick should never have happened.
No, and the second one that Arteta did his nut about was this one. Now, this is just fucking ridiculous. Carl, I'll get you in on this one in a minute. But Gary Neville said in the commentary, and Gary Neville was a right back, a very good right back, as most people will remember. And he said every time you slide into block like that, your arms are always in that natural position. The ball surely hits Murphy in the arm, Carl. He doesn't actively move his arm to the ball. How can anybody describe that as a scandalous decision that's not been given, mate?
it's not an unnatural position where his arm is when you've just said he's sliding in. Look at Shaw. It's something that I think Botman's brought to the club. What we've already spoke to him, but you watch Botman every time when he's close like that, his hands are always behind his back. But the thing is with Murphy, because he's the closest person, in my opinion, to obviously the attempted cross. Like you say, he's closing down, he's sliding in. Look at the distance between the foot and where Murphy is in that split second. There's no distance for the ball to travel. If the ball had travelled to where Shaw is, right, and it had hit Shaw's arm and it was out a little bit, then you could say it's a penalty. But that is not a penalty. You've not got time to adjust your body, and it's not an unnatural position. And the scandalous comments, I hope Isaac Hayden, I read out as well, someone tweeted Isaac Hayden got reprimanded by the FA for coming out and saying something against Chelsea when we got done down there. Now, that Gabriel Martinelli, that Gabriel defender.
Yeah, the centre half, he did something about it. Yeah, he's tweeted something.
And then you've had a comment like that from Arteta. So I think that club needs to be brought in to distribute as well, because not 100%. Only were his antics, and I know we're going to probably get onto him, but you look at like what he was doing, I'm just thinking, what a knobhead. Like, you know what I mean?
It really was.
Ridiculous.
If he's behaving like that, you know, we're going to get into this now. But if he behaves like that, what does it say to his players? But we've just shown there 3 lads on a podcast that looking at that, the stills of that is there's not a penalty. So he's got VAR, he's got the ability to go and look at it after the game and then go and talk to the press. But he was still batting that drum about how, you know, it was ridiculous and all this stuff. I mean, Mark, coming over at you for the Arteta thing, you were absolutely disgusted by this. What I love about this picture here is pretty clear that Eddie Howe, even the mild-mannered Eddie Howe, is giving him the "you can fuck right off" thumb, which I thought was amazing to see that side of Eddie Howe as well, mate.
I don't think I've ever seen Eddie get pissed off in my life, and it takes something to get him to that point. But Jesus, I mean, he was dancing around on the sideline like I don't know. I mean, Carl, you asked for a little video to get put together earlier on with the with Boney M as the background to him dancing around on the sideline, and it was just ludicrous. And he's totally taken that side of Pep, hasn't he? He's learned that from Pep, and he just thinks he can go on down the sideline, out of his technical area constantly. And he's just the driving force then for the Arsenal players. And if you watch every decision, there's at least 8 Arsenal players that then surround the referee. And this happened last season when, I mean, we talked about it on the pod at that point. There should have been 8 Arsenal players booked for surrounding the referee. And it happened again last night. And to be fair, Newcastle were guilty of it as well. There were times when there were 4 or 5 Newcastle players that did it. So at that point, they've got to start this thing where if it's anybody but the captain that approaches the referee in that regard, just book them all. Because
the thing is, though,
the quickest way to stop it.
A couple of things to add to that. So I think it's this particular manager's jumping up and down on the touchline and being in the linesman's face or the 4th official's face. Unfortunately, I think it's come from the continent. It's come from not the UK style of doing things. I don't really think it's been there. Yes, Ferguson used to be quite up there. But
Jose was really bad at it, wasn't he? Jose was really bad at it early on at Chelsea.
And it's crept in a lot more. And like Mark said then, I think it needs to be stamped out because it doesn't teach. Not only you just said, Mark, about if that was school kids, parents would have been kicking off. You can't, like, what happens if it's a young manager or a young referee that don't want to play now because they've got parents effing and jeffing and going on like that, or managers? I think it needs stamped out straight away. The thing about surrounding the referees as well, if you look at how 2 different sports are refereed, you look at rugby, where they call the referee sir, and they listen to what, like, the referee pretty much says straight away, now you listen to me. That Welsh guy, the referee,
he's great. He's
the best referee And the other referee that I put into his bracket was that Pierluigi Collina. Was it him from
Psycho Eyes?
He just used to scream at the players. He was
exactly.
great.
So I think there needs to be something done. But I think the difference between the Newcastle players surrounding the referee and the difference with Arsenal, I think the Newcastle players were in control behind Trippier, where he was saying, back off. Yeah. I'm the captain. Go away. Yeah. He's in control and he speaks to the referee. Whereas I looked at Arsenal and I've seen Man United do it when we played them, when Ronaldo tried to score that goal from that you just cannot have that. You just cannot have it. Apparently he's coming in Newcastle in the Champions League.
He's swimming in his Scrooge McDuck DuckTales style bin in Saudi Arabia, I think. But just a couple of comments there. The lads pulled up. I think Roger was right. I'd have sent him off. I think the ref was weak there. I think he should have sent them off. So he sent Arteta to the stands. The way he was behaving was a disgrace. And I think Gibbo made a good point there about Trippier, and you did as well, Carl. There was one little bit of Trippier, which just summed up Trippier for me, was just after Bruno got booked for that challenge. And to be fair, it was probably a yellow card, but the ref could have warned Bruno. That kind of set the precedent of booking everybody left, right, and centre. But it was about 5 or 6 minutes after that something happened, and Bruno went steaming towards the referee, and Trippier went fuck off, and he shoved him out of the way straight away, and Bruno just turned and walked away, because he respects Trippier as his captain.
Yeah, of course.
And you're right, Carl. Without that guy on the pitch, we could have had a
forever. I think he'll be a brilliant manager in the future.
Oh, massively.
Because
you can see it already.
He's constantly coaching. And when people said last year when he was injured, why is he going on the coach and all the rest of it? And you need that mentality. We spoke about the Sean Longstaff article on one of the last when I told you guys about it, and then it was talked about how in one of his first days, how came in and bared all. The rest of the team have done that, but you need leaders for that. And I'll go back to the Arteta point. Who got interviewed first? Eddie Howe, right?
Yeah.
How calm was he?
Oh, massively calm.
Who got interviewed second? Yeah. And he was still raging like a baby. So when he turned around and said, he didn't give Newcastle any credit at all, where straight away, and even in his after interviews about that, Martinelli said he's like one of the best players in the league. It just speaks volumes about how you conduct yourself and how you don't. And Eddie Howe must have got seriously pissed off last night with all that jockeying about for him to then say something. Yeah,
absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think Mark, just with Arteta as well. Before we move on, I mean, Arsenal have been class this season, no doubt, right? Top of the league. The only team they failed to score against is us, actually, which is quite funny. But twice. I think twice, yeah. Talking about a title race, if Arteta's losing his rag on the 3rd of January, there's a hell of a lot of football to go before he wins that league, mate. If he's losing the blob now, he needs to watch what he's doing.
I don't want to invoke Keegan, but there was a very, very similar sort of reaction where teams, teams are gonna play a little bit dirty, a little bit.
Yeah, mind games, mate.
Look, we were pissing and moaning the other day about Leeds, weren't we? And they did exactly the same sort of thing. They didn't show quite as much ambition as Newcastle did last night, but look, it's going to happen when you've got a team that's packed full of flair players like they have. You disrupt them. It's how you stop them influencing the game. You give them, and you get niggly. You put them on the deck a couple of times. You take the yellow card to try and just disrupt the play. If you can't cope with that now, when there's still 21 games to go, then they're going to struggle to keep that lead against City, because he'll come unstuck and he might have his Keegan moment. So yeah, apologies for invoking the Keegan rant, but there were shades of it, definitely.
There was. I mean, he's an experienced manager, though, and I think he's up against an experienced manager in Pep Guardiola. Klopp should be there, but he's not, which is great. I love that Turkish teeth bastard. Eddie Howe, as you say, Carl, he's the personification of calm, isn't he? I don't think you can rattle this guy. I think he's not that way. That's the most emotional we've seen him, and all he did was go fuck off. Which is great.
It was quite funny that Mad Dog came over, and it all sort of like went like that. He must have just like given him the wink and went, sort of.
Arteta must have went, oh shit, I don't want to mess with him.
Well, I think it was, is it Henry? Who's the guy that writes for someone Winter? Is it Henry Winter?
Henry Winter, yeah.
Yeah, he basically turned around and wrote an article and said that basically Arteta, he got outclassed by Eddie Howe last night in terms of from a tactical point of view. And like you've just said then, Pep knows Arteta because they've worked together. So if there's one person that you don't want chasing you, is your person who's pretty much taught you everything you know. Like the Yoran bloody Skywalker scenario, because he's going to know everything that you know and he's going to be able to wind you up. Do you know what I mean?
Lot to learn you have, Mr. Arteta, yes. Absolutely. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. But Newcastle United definitely showed last night that there's no fluke this. We belong in amongst that top four. If we're able to play like that against a team like that who's played as well as they have, it shows you different sides of our game. We've got the quality. We've also got the grit to dig in and get draws like that. So absolutely phenomenal result. We were buzzing, and long may this continue. Just Mark's just nipped off there, but we're going to just jump into the next section. Transfer links. Oh, he's back. He's back. As soon as I say transfers, the stat man's back in the house. He's like got ears on sticks. He's straight back in. But obviously, there's loads of transfers. It's like Spidey sense tingling. So there's loads of players being linked to the club, Mark. Obviously, the transfer windows up. We've been doing loads of rumour has it video, guys. If you haven't checked them out, they're up on the channel. Mark goes into overdrive with a stack computer, does some amazing work there, and it gives you a real good insight into what these players could bring to Newcastle United if we sign them. But Mark, there seems to be a bit of a growing noise about us getting a fullback here, doesn't it, mate? From La Liga. Do you want to just take that through?
Yeah, so is it Ivan Fresneda from Valladolid, who is actually today's video because it's been over the last day or so. So the sort of the talk from this afternoon or early this evening is that he has suggested that or it's been suggested to Sky that he said his goodbyes at Valladolid. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that he's coming to Newcastle, but there are a few other clubs that are interested, but Newcastle seems to be the most likely destination for him. So that could very well be the next one in. Obviously, after Garang Kwol, he's another young player, full of potential. He has the perfect player to play and be, to learn from ahead of him in that squad in Trippier. So it's it looks like a very good one. He definitely looks like a good player. And again, it fit. We talk about this every week, don't we? It fits the bill. He's young. He's got plenty of potential about him. He will learn, and he'll learn well under Howe and alongside Trippier.
Yeah, it's like a contingency call, isn't it? Lee's just saying in the comments there, can't see us sign anybody to get into the 11 this window. We're going to save that money for the summer. Eddie Howe has mentioned a bit about FFP and not stitching yourself up for future windows. There is some incredible deals that could be done in this window with some great players. I know that Roger's already mentioned a couple there, Mads and Tillemans. These young lads, Carl, I think it just shows you how far the club has come building a contingency plan for the future. We've got this unbelievable player at right back. He's a leader. He's not just that, he's class. He's up and down the line. His quality, his touch, his crossing. The young lad, Fonseca, he's got a bit of skill, he's got a bit of pace. He come through the Real Madrid academy. He's got something about him, and at 18 years old, to be playing in La Liga like he has been doing, he's obviously got potential. This is a great plan by the club, isn't it, to get this lad to learn under Kieran Trippier and then hopefully step in to his shoes in a couple of years when he retires.
Well, yeah, and what I will say is a club that's been really good at it over the years is Chelsea. And what they've done is they've signed everybody. And then even if they don't, like I think at one point I read that they had 34 players out on loan.
Ridiculous,
Now,
man.
the reason why they're able to spend, and it will catch up with them at some point, but the reason why they're able to spend 200-300 million, and then they're on about spending another 150 million or 200 million in this January transfer window, is because they're buying these players like what we're trying to do now, and then they're seeing a potential, even if they don't get into the first team, that they may end up going on to another club in Europe for, treble, quadruple the money that you're buying them for.
Yeah. So like they did with De Bruyne and Salah and that in the past. They've done that before, haven't they? Yeah.
What you're buying is you're buying that promising talent, and they might not fit into they might not kick on, but they might, the buy-on fee, which is something that Ashley always used to look for, but we're trying to do it in a way where we develop the first team, but we also develop that development bit underneath. And I think it's a really, really shrewd bit of business by the club that they could turn, like they might sign 15, 20 players like this, Chris, and we might get 5 class players from it. And then we might sell 10 of those players and make £100 million profit, which goes straight and back into the FFP, which keeps on rearing its ugly head all the time.
But City are getting involved in this too, aren't they? Now, where they go out and sign up these players, and you've only got to look at the likes of, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, Douglas Luiz, who went to Villa, bought him for really next to nothing. Never played a game for the club, sold him on for 20 odd million, had a buyback clause in the contract. That's where Newcastle will want ahead. It's the same thing that Barcelona do. All those clubs that have that sort of youth set up, and it's where Newcastle will want to be. They're going to want to have that in their locker where they can bring these players in for £3, £4, £5 million along the way, sell them on for 20, because they know they're not all going to make it. And then you'll get the gems, you'll get the likes of the Alvarez's, and you'll get the likes of brain's gone completely mush, but you get the point where you get these players in young, you take them from elsewhere, you develop them, and then they become stars.
Look at the 2 players that playing for Arsenal now from City, Zinchenko and Jesus.
Yeah.
They sold them for 85 million quid, and then went and signed Haaland for 60 odd, because they're in a position. They're in a position where they're up here, and people will want to sign for them, but they've obviously had that progression. And I've just seen one of the comments there where they're saying that we're ahead of schedule in terms of where we are. In terms of the transfers, I think it's on a bit of a knife edge in terms of where the club will go. Eddie Howe said it's a day-to-day process where they're looking at a day-to-day. For me, I think we're short of a I'm not saying a Bruno type player, but someone of that quality in the middle of the park to work alongside Willock or Longstaff and Bruno, someone to work alongside them to get into the Champions League, because I think we do need to sign a player in January to play in central midfield, because I think
an established player, maybe someone like Tillemans, Carl, someone like that, for 15, 20 minutes.
Someone like him, or this young lad that we were linked with the other day from Boca Juniors. I mean, I've not seen him play, but I know everybody can have a good highlights reel, but I do think we need to be sensible. And I think one of the things that Jamie Rubin said when they went to Saudi Arabia in one of the fans' forums, he said that, yes, FFP is obviously there. We need to be smart, keep our powder dry so we can go big in stages. And I think if we're in Europe, we will go big again. But he said if there's a player there that we want, we will spend the money. And I think that's the case. Let's see what Leicester are going to be like in terms of, it's interesting that we've recalled Dubravka when we've got Carl Darlow and we've got Lloris, the other guy. It'll be interesting to see how that develops, because if they want to have a make weight now, we've got extra players to maybe look to move out.
Yeah, it'd be interesting because Dubravka was on the bench. So it could possibly be that maybe Darlow's the make weight, but I do think we'll go back to Leicester and we'll test the resolve, possibly for Tielemans. I think Maddison might be overpriced until the summer, but Tielemans is obviously going to go for peanut or nothing if they don't do anything about it now. So it's their only chance to really get anything. Mark, there was another young player as well that's been linked to us, which is this young lad here, which is a Brazilian wonder kid, Mateus Franca. There's a lot of news bubbling up about this kid. That apparently the move to Newcastle is pretty much imminent. We'll probably do a rumour has a video on this lad as well with his stats and everything as best as we can. But again, this plays back into the bolstering up that the next generation type squad. I mean, we might get lucky if you remember way back when. I know he's probably not in the same conversation here because if this kid's a Brazilian wonder kid caught in the attention of all the major European super clubs. But when we signed Ayoze Perez from Tenerife for something daft like 1.7 million, he was meant to be a development player. He ended up being a real focal point in the side. So it can happen, mate. Do you think some of these young lads, if we get them, might break through? You know, likes of Qual or likes of Franca, maybe?
That's it. You buy your ticket, don't you? You take your chance with these lads, and if they're good enough to come in, great. It's a massive bonus. If you have to develop them for 1 or 2 years, then that's fine. You haven't spent an awful lot of money. I think he was being touted for around 12 or 13 million.
Nothing, is it? Yeah.
Which I think again a little bit like Alan Varela was sort of release clause. So that might be the way that this works. So, but again, it's that player that's probably not ready for the first team and would need a little bit of bedding in. You know, go back to the way that Eddie Howe sort of bedded in Bruno when he first came to the club, and he was an established player in Europe at that point. Took him a few games to get him in. These might take a little bit longer, but they show massive promise. So that it's just it goes to show that the scouting network is looking everywhere for these players. You've only got to look at the signing of Qual, haven't you, to know that they're stretching far and wide to bring in these players that could be the future and bolster that younger setup.
Well, this boy's got 4 goals in 17 games for Flamengo. So he obviously is a bit of an attacking threat as well, which is brilliant. But as Carl rightly says, we could end up being like what Chelsea do and build that conveyor belt of quality players that get well coached. You know, we've got Carrick's brother in there now. He's a really good coach. He's got a great pedigree, for developing players. So you never know. We could even loan them down the road to Middlesbrough as well. But Michael Carrick's playing some great stuff there. So it's all good behind the scenes. I'm laughing at this comment here. I think you pulled this up in the chat. I think Mark, was it you that said that the Chronicle just surpassed themselves with their shite rumours. This was doing the rounds about Harry Kane. I mean, listen, Harry Kane's a phenomenal player, right? There's no doubt about that. But we're not going to go and spunk 150 million quid on Harry Kane. Oh, well, lads. I mean, that's just nonsense, isn't it?
If they're worried about go on. No, I was going to say if they're worried about FFP, they're not going to spend 150 million on Harry Kane or that. I mean, let's
you might as well just double that and get Mbappe.
You might as well. Fuck it. Why not? Griezmann's already told him how great we are on his football manager game. So exactly. you might as well sign him, mate. But yeah, I think there will be loads of players linked to the club. I mean, just going back to Craig's comment there before, and you backed it up as well, Carla. I do think that looking at that squad, listen, we were brilliant last night against Arsenal. We really dug in. But the one thing I couldn't help but notice, and it's not a negative, when you're digging into those games like that and you're absorbing the pressure, you just need that little bit more quality to nick you that goal, to get it 1-0, 2-0, whatever it may be. And we were lacking that a bit last night. Wilson was off form. Bruno was too busy going back than going forward. Joe Linton and Willock were obviously covering Burns' arse. If we had somebody like a Maddison or a Tielemans just to get the ball from 25 yards, just go, you know what, bang, top corner. I think that's the bit we're missing. And there is some really quality players this window, lads, that we could go for. And I'd be quite disappointed if the club aren't looking at some established players. That why would you not want to come to this club, Carl, right now? The way we're going, the way we're playing, everybody talking about it. Look how class the manager is. Look what he gets out of players. He's turned Almiron from a bag of shite to the best right winger in the league. He's turned Joe Linton from a miss-hitting striker to Patrick Vieira. Why wouldn't you want to come and sign for this guy? And I think established players would do, mate.
Well, one of the big famous sayings was, you'd have to offer more money to come to Newcastle instead of Brentford, because you'd pay less money to go to Brentford if by a certain idiot that's on TalkSport. However, you look at the club as a whole, you look at the region and what it's got to offer now, and because the likes of Trippier came as the first one over the line, the likes of the Bruno that they got, Botman, who was touted for by Maldini, because he obviously Maldini knows how to defend, so he's obviously saw something in Botman. I think that there isn't anything stopping Newcastle getting these players. But my only worry, and we've had this has been mentioned in the chat about which one would you take, as I don't want to start signing 32, 33-year-old mercenaries who are coming at the back end of their career. For instance, like N'Golo Kante, you'd have to pay him a lot of money, who's been quite injured. Yeah. Don't get it wrong, he's a quality player, but I think signing someone like him would disrupt the harmony with the club. And I think I'd rather go for another player who was on that list as a Tielemans or a Trossard at Brighton, who it seems to be all of a sudden out of favour. I don't know what's happened there. He didn't play last night.
Yeah, I think, Mark, you said, Mark, that having Brighton took up the option to extend his contract or something, because he's out of contract, isn't he?
It was, it sort of in some of the media outlets last night that they had taken up the option to extend his contract until 2024. So that it looks like they've got at least another 18 months with him. I mean, it guarantees them a fee, I guess, if they do move him on in the summer. So they'll maybe keep him until the summer and then potentially sell him at that point. He's the kind of player you don't want to lose for nothing, because he's such a good footballer. You just don't want that walking out the door. So it's I mean, that makes sense. You might still see movement because they can now command a fee, and you know what Brighton will do. They're in that almost Moneyball-esque sort of way that they bring in these players for next to nothing, and they'll make a fortune on some of them, the likes of him. Casido is the other one as well, where they make a fortune on them.
Well, they won't do that anymore because we've got Ashworth now, so let's hope what we do.
Absolutely. I'll tell you what's an interesting one. I'm going to throw this name at you, now, just a simple yes or no, right? So on that list of players that was out of contract this summer, we haven't got the list to pull up, but there was one player on there that caught my eye, right? Now, on his day, he can be superb. Now, I don't know if he passes PK's test, though, so that might give you an indication.
I know how you're going to say.
Carl, Wilfred Zaha, yes or no?
I'd have him.
Mark?
Is he too short term?
How old is he now?
Couple of years with him, 10, 12 goals a season, create goals.
What? He's 30 big now.
Game player.
I mean, I get the point. You've brought in Trippier, who's that age. Does he 32. Does he give you enough? I'd certainly like him. You'd look like watching him from down that left-hand side, because he gives you the flipped option to Almiron down the right. He's not going to cost an awful lot in terms of fee or anything. So wages will be high because of that, but that evens itself out a bit.
Yeah, Moody twat, says Roger.
I think the only way that he comes into this club, and he has a bit of a curveball. The only way that he comes into the club is if Sam Maximan leaves.
Yeah. Do you know what? I still think, and you're right there, and Ash is saying it as well, is he any better than ASM? I'm not so sure. I think in terms of a goal threat, Ashy is better than ASM, because from a goal threat, he will score goals, Zaha. Does he create enough? I don't know, but he's not really had any good centre forwards to pass it to, so he's had to go and score himself. But I'm not sure ASM is an Eddie Howe player long-term call. I'm with, I really have my doubts on that. I just don't think he is.
But I think with someone like Howe to put his arm around him, which he's just proved what he's done with the players that you just mentioned before, the Almirons and the Joe Lintons of this world, then you'll get a bigger fee for Sam Maximan than you would get for Zaha. So what you've got to do here is, from a pragmatic point of view, is look at FFP if this is what we've got to do now. So Ashworth even said in an interview that sometimes you might have to sell before you're then able to move on to the next level. How much would you get for Sam Maximan now? 40 million, 50 million?
Possibly mid-40s, maybe 50 at a push. If he was on form going into a window. Jack's saying that he thinks they're both equally inconsistent. Mark.
Yeah, they are.
And Roger's saying he's more of a goal scorer.
I was going to say, yeah, definitely. He's got 45 league goals in the last 5 seasons, so he's definitely much more of a goal threat. However, the caveat that I would throw at that is he is the player that pretty much everything goes through for Palace.
Yeah.
So he's going to be, he takes the penalties. He's always going to do that. But I think that's my biggest thing.
He is a fucking whinger, he is a moaning squaddy.
Moaning constantly, week in, week out.
He is one of the most foul players in the league, though.
I give you that. He is.
And all I'll say is, this is obviously hypothetical at the moment. We're just saying on names. But the thing is, he's not being coached by Eddie Howe. And if we're saying Eddie Howe's this like Messiah that can turn players around, at Newcastle right now, the biggest thing I think on Eddie Howe's shopping list would be attitude, would be right at the top.
Very true. Yeah. So, got to be the right mentality. So
he might not fit his bill, but if he speaks to him and says, this is what I want to do, you either buy into it or you don't, then, but as I say, that's the only way that I could ever see him coming into the club is if you let Maxi go, because obviously you're balancing the books more, then you're making a profit, aren't you?
Yeah. I think I'd get more than 40 quid from Roger. I think you might have missed the M off the back of that, mate. He's worth more than 40 nicker. Craig saying he thinks that last night proved that Howe doesn't trust Maxi defensively. Is Saha any better? And Mark sneakily said Lewis Saha. We had him once upon a time on loan. He was shite when he was on loan. He couldn't do anything.
From Mets. But he went to Manchester United.
He did. He went to Man United, Fulham and Man United. He was class. But it's an interesting one. I do think, like I say, there's some quality players to be had here. Roger's just corrected himself there. I thought you meant that, mate. There is some quality players to be had here that could improve the team. But you're totally right, Carl. It's got to be the right character. It's got to be the right mentality. Eddie Howe was very, very honest about that. I don't think Eddie Howe would even go after a player because football's a very insidious game, and people know who the dickheads are and they know who the wankers are because they play at national football with the guy's teammate. They go, "What's he like?" They go, "He's a prick" or whatever. So they'll know about players' mentality. Eddie Howe will know about players' mentality. Ashworth will know about them. So I think we won't go after the wrong type of player. So whoever we do go after and we do sign, I think will definitely be the right character, no doubt. So we're just going to finish up, lads, with an FA Cup preview because the league's on hold this weekend. We're in FA Cup action. We're live on the BBC at 6:00. So hopefully they've got Shearer on, grinning like a Cheshire cat here to here. We're taking on Sheffield Wednesday down at is it at home? Is it home or Hillsborough? Hillsborough, I thought it was. It's the Leicester games at home, and they got me wires crossed there. So, Mark, I mean, Sheffield Wednesday, old school Premier League team for guys our age, so the Chris Waddles and the Benito Carbonis of the world, but they've obviously drifted away to the wilderness. They're second in League Two. Barry Bannon still plays for them, I think. He's got to be about 49 now, old Barry Bannon, isn't he, mate?
I think he's about the same age as Chris Waddle, to be fair.
He probably is. But do you see Newcastle mixing it around a bit, changing the lineup? And do you see Newcastle getting through this in the next round, mate?
I think so. I think yes to both of those. I think that Sheffield Wednesday are probably going to be coming back up out of League One this season. They're in good form.
Yeah, they're second, as Roger says.
They're sitting second in the league. They're going to be no mugs. It is a potential banana skin in that regard. We all know what happened last year in the FA Cup at this stage. So, I don't think for 1 second Eddie's going to take it lightly. I do think that they will. There will be changes to the side. I think you're going to see the likes of probably Lascelles come in to play. I think I dropped into the chat of the post game last night. You might actually see Lascelles get booked as he's on the pitch this time instead of getting booked for being on the sideline. But yeah, I think there will be 1 or 2 rested. Like you touched on earlier, I think you might see Isaac in the squad. I'm not sure you'll see minutes unless he gets the odd 5 or 10 minutes at the end of the game just as a run out if the if the game's clear. But it's going to be a good test.
Definitely, I'd quite like to see Elliot Anderson get a start in this game. He's been in and out with injury. He had some promising burst, didn't he, at the start of the season? And we're all just waiting. I know PK is, because he calls majority Maradona and he loves him. We're all just waiting for this game that Elliot Anderson sparks into life. Do you think this could be the one of the weekend, mate?
Well, he played at Bristol Rovers, didn't he?
He did, on loan.
I think it was in League. Was it League 2 at the time?
And that was League 2, and they got promoted to League 1.
So I think he's much better than that standard. So I think he would come in. He should come in. I think he should bring Sam Maximan in. I think Chris Wood will start. Murphy will probably go on the right. Almiron will get rested. We've not really got great options in midfield in terms of bringing people in. So it may be a case of Longstaff, Willock in the middle. Bruno might get a rest, and there might be a youthful bench. But with Matt Targett being out now for a while, we've not really got any options at left back because Paul Signal Dummett is still injured. Matt Ritchie probably might start at left back because he's done it.
He might get a game, Ritchie might get a game,
And then obviously you've got Lascelles, but you might then bring Byrne back into centre back and have
Lascelles.
Lascelles and Byrne playing as a partnership maybe, and then obviously Trippier. I think Trippier will stay. I think because you always want that calmness on the pitch, so I think there'd be quite a bit of a change in terms of, and I'm not sure who he'd put in goal. He might have Dubravka in goal, or he might have if I've seen some comments about if he gets registered for, he can't get registered for anybody else now. So you might just play him.
There is a rumour knocking around that Dubravka will play at the weekend, and that if that does happen, that means he's staying. Because I think the ruling is still that you can't play for more than 2. You can be registered and not play in an official competition. And because he's not played yet, I think that means he can still move on and play elsewhere within Europe. I think I put in the comments earlier on one of the lads from Forest that moved from Watford at the start of the season now can't play anywhere else, and he's off to the Middle East.
I don't understand. I don't understand the reason why he's come back. If it's other than to move on, because he obviously was signed Lloris, and we've got Darlow, and we've got Gillespie, and we've got that new young kid, that young keeper as well. So we're well versed in that goalkeeping players. I just don't understand why he would be brought back if it's not to be moved on.
Paul saying there, but why not play Karius? I think it was Craig Hope had tweeted something about the Karius. I think his contract needs to be decided upon by the 16th of January, and then they can end it and then send him on his way. So I've got a feeling if Dubravka's coming back and he does start at the weekend against Sheffield Wednesday, then he probably isn't getting sold. But if Darlow starts and he's not even in the squad, potentially, there could be some movement. I think we might see some of the young boys. I mean, we'll try and throw up a bit of a match preview as best as we can on the channel, but I think we'll see maybe the young left back, is it Matthew Bonswell, who had a little cameo in pre-season games, and he looked quite good. He had a bit of pace about him, had a little bit of something about him. Obviously, Joe White's had a bit of a turn as well, isn't he? Dylan Stevenson might get a bit of a sniff. He had some game time in Saudi Arabia, so we might possibly see some of the younger players, Alex Murphy and so forth, might get a bit of a chance. But I think how it's taken the cups really seriously, and that's class, because we've bombed out of cups for so many seasons, haven't we, lads? But we've thrown together makeshift sides and just limped out. But I don't think he'll do that. And the fact we've got 2 games so close together, I think the Leicester game will be the priority game over the Sheffield Wednesday game. So I think we'll go for a stronger side against Leicester in the Carabao than we will do against Sheffield Wednesday, I reckon, lads, at the weekend.
Definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
absolutely. I think we'll win. I think we'll win. I think we've got enough to win, and that'll be class to get through the next round of a cup and just go to these games being excited and happy again. But that's just pretty much wrapped up then, lads, for this week. Another class show. Thank you so much, boys, for coming on and talking Newcastle United. Thank you to everybody in the comments as well. We really appreciate it. It really helps the channel flow. If you can, please like this video as well. It helps get around YouTube. And as I mentioned at the start, I think Mark threw it in the comments. If you are new tonight and you've just checked us out for the first time, click that subscribe button. Come and join us. It's just under Carl's magnificent beard there. Click that button. And there he is. And, you'll not regret it. Loads of cracking evermore. Live shows, 2 a week and pop-up videos, especially the transfer window. Always good to see what these players are all about. But until then, let's keep supporting that team of United. Bring on the FA Cup at the weekend. And another win for the Magpies. We'll catch you later.
Cheers, guys.
Take care, guys.